Hello, leaders. Welcome back to another episode of Leading Saints. Today, I've welcomed in my buddy and pal, Pastor Jeff. Many of you see me out in the wild, and you don't even remember I have a Leading Saints podcast. You're the guy that's sometimes on Hello Saints. So I thought it'd be fun to, on a more regular basis, invite Pastor Jeff in and just have a conversation. We literally sat down with no agenda, and it turned out to be a great conversation, which you should watch and share. And we talk everything about what are his plans for Hello Saints? What are his real, true intentions? And is he just doing this to make money? Well, we'll get to all that and what keeps him up at night as a pastor. So, good conversation. Let's jump into it. Here is my conversation with Pastor Jeff from Hello Saints. All right, Pastor Jeff. So this is you're one of those guests where, I want to have as on a recurring basis, but I actually don't want to talk about what we're talking about until we're talking, because some of the best content we have is at our lunches or hanging out. And
our Marco Polos should be their own podcast. And
you have actually featured some of our Marco Polos on your channel, right?
I have. And that's the benefit of also like us both being content creators. Yeah. So that like it can be kind of seamless, because it all blends together. Right. So this will be an easy conversation.
And I've become, I don't know, I'm sure there's others you have on regularly, but I'm like, if your podcast was a sitcom, I'm the fun next door neighbor who pops in every once in a while.
Or you're Mr. McFeely from Mr. Rogers. You're the post.
My life goals have come together. Speedy delivery. Oh man, what a classic! Were you raised by Mr. Rogers as
100%.
Well? Yeah. Look at this. See, I had a Protestant preaching to me at a young age before you came on the scene.
He's a Presbyterian.
Yeah.
I think he was ordained.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah.
A
saint.
He was.
In all levels in terms of that word.
Well, not in every level.
We've probably baptized him at this point. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. We probably haven't. His wife's still around to come after him.
Yeah, is that right?
So I've sort of become the guy, like, a lot of times, people recognize my voice in my audience the most, but when I'm out in the wild, it's usually like, you're that guy that's on that with that preacher guy, what. And
you're like, I have a podcast too.
I make content too, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll start with the question I always get, like, so what's the deal with this guy? What's his end goal, right? And because we've had these conversations before, but like, here we are it's September 2025, and I mean, your channel's rocking it. I can't imagine there's a ton of content you still need to do to understand our people. But like, I mean, how's it going? Or what are your intentions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question I've been answering for the past 3 or 4 years since I launched the channel.
Let's go there again.
We can go there again. Well, I mean, it actually is good to hit the refresh on that, because
it's probably changed, right?
It changes, yeah. I mean, where initially I was sort of, as I call it, like an idiot abroad, like wandering into this, like, what is going on here? Yeah. This Latter-day Saints space, knowing literally nothing. Now it's shifted, because I'm not just the bright-eyed, curious pastor. Now I'm like a little bit more of an informed, still curious pastor who my primary objective isn't so much to have a safe space to explore as much as it is now to maintain a safe space to continue the conversation.
Yeah.
When I look at like the General Conference videos that I've done, the very first one I went to, I was at the very beginning of the channel, and I walked into General Conference just like, what is this? What's going on here? What are they talking about? I had no context for what was taking place. Whereas a more recent one, now I'm able to not only understand and contextualize, but I'm coming from a much more informed place. And so being that I'm no longer like just this inquisitive visitor, I'm a little bit more of like a more informed guest that's sticking around. Yeah, the channel, the commentary, the ideas around it have shifted a little bit for sure. But it's all about safety. That's really what it comes down to. I don't probably say that quite as much on the channel, but it's like, can we hold a safe space to keep this conversation going in a space that has otherwise been not safe for a lot of reasons?
And I think like you've just learned over the years now, like not only how to be, not only how to visit, but how to be a good visitor. And, you understand like, oh, yeah, that used to be a little interesting to me, but now I get it. And I put that dynamic in the whole context of what's going on. And I'm okay with it, where I'm sure others come into that and they're thinking, explain this to me, right? Like other Protestants.
Yeah. Now that I've gotten past sort of the shock value in multiple areas, I mean, there's always three main areas that I engage with the Latter-day Saint paradigm: the history, the culture, and the doctrine. Mm-hmm. And each one of those comes when you're first entering into it, comes with its own shock, or it takes a minute to really like lean in and figure out, well, so what was this all about again? And a lot of that is because you have to push past preconceived notions or stereotypes. Mm-hmm. And that in and of itself is a lot of work. And it's not to say that those trappings still aren't part of the process, having to push through that, but it's a little bit easier for me to recognize, they talk about with counterfeit bills. Yeah. They train people not to recognize the counterfeit, but to recognize the authentic one. Yeah. And the more you understand the authentic bill, it's easier. It's kind of how it feels now. Whereas before I'm trying to figure out like what's true, what's not true, what's a stereotype, what's a misconception. I'm getting more and more clarity about what is the authentic persuasion, story, position of a Latter-day Saint paradigm, so that when a false or misperception or something like that idea is presented to me, I can say, oh yeah, no, that's not it. So it makes for a more efficient conversation. And opportunity on my end, which I like. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
If you were to go back to like the first month of you doing Hello Saints, like with what you know now, like what advice would you give to yourself? What comes to mind?
That's a good question, because on one hand, sometimes I'll go back and I'll rewatch the very first video that I released, and I'm able to say what I said in that video still holds true. Mm-hmm. That I come from a paradigm where people say weird things about Latter-day Saints, and I don't really like that. Like, I want to hear from you. Mm-hmm. I want to focus on what is truth together, who is Jesus together, that stuff. I think that I would probably go back and give myself the advice to be very careful about when articulating Protestant evangelical doctrine. Mm-hmm. To make sure I'm doing it in a way that might provide clarity and insight, but doesn't come across too preachy. Yeah. I think at the first 6 months to a year of the videos that I was putting together, sometimes stating a Protestant position kind of came across like, thanks for sharing what you believe, but let me tell you, and you watch even some of my earliest videos, like the one where I visited Nauvoo, you'll see that. Uh-huh. Whereas now I try to blend it a little bit more. Like, it's okay, I see where you're coming from. This is how we see it, but I see where you're coming from. It's a little bit more nuanced now than this is how you view it and this is how I view it. So, but that was something I had to learn. Mm-hmm. And but that's probably the advice I would give myself. In fact, I think early on, some of our first conversations, you would say that to me. Like, I kind of feel like you make these videos, but then the last part of it is you saying, and oh yeah, here's why I'm right.
Yeah, I would say like, it's like you drag us over to your house and be like, now that I came to your house, come to my house.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I don't know if I want to go to your house,
Yeah, I
Jeff.
didn't ask to come to your house.
But I guess here we go, right?
Yeah.
But then my wife also gave me the perspective. She's like, actually, I like it when he does that. I'm like, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that helped me sort of reassess, like, maybe I'm being a little bit like defensive or like, hey, whoa, buddy,
mm-hmm.
Which I'm sure many people have felt like from Latter-day Saints as we knock on their door, like, we came to your house, so now let us in.
Yeah.
So.
And that's part of the complexity of the channel in general, because that has to be there in some form. Otherwise, it really is just me coming in and saying, okay, I've received all the information. I'm not going to tell you at all how I'm processing it or how it hits my paradigm, mm-hmm. but that it loses its edge and its punch. I think there is something important about me maintaining, but this is how we view it.
Yeah.
I think that is an important aspect of the conversation. So, yeah.
And it's not because sometimes it's so hard to, because naturally every human has a bias. So, and we prioritize our bias,
yeah,
right? Like there's something you're just not understanding so that you can get to my understanding and then we're good. Right.
Yeah.
And so let me make sure I take the time to explain that to you. But, and there's a maturity there we have to get past of just being like, actually, it's just okay if he shares his bias, I share mine, and we just move on without changing minds, right?
Yeah. And I think what I've been able to do to kind of recalibrate that is I've been able to better identify some of the nuances that require repeated explanation in both directions, where I'm able to kind of hear and observe, how does a Latter-day Saint who holds to the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon, which I don't align with, how are they seeing Jesus and the gospel and the message of Christ in that? That has required a repeated insight and articulation and conversation, because it so clashes with certain aspects of my paradigm. So I've, through reading the Book of Mormon and engaging with other people I've had on the channel, have allowed that to be an ongoing topic that we revisit for my own benefit, because it requires a lot of strain on my part to really, and I don't want to dismiss it, even though I don't agree with it. Same thing goes in the other end when it comes to a Latter-day Saint perspective on certain aspects of my belief. I think the first one that comes to my mind is the whole, like, there's 45,000 other denominations and they all think the other one's wrong and going to hell, and this is proof that we need a restoration. Like, that's just not accurate. So I've had to kind of repeatedly explain denominationalism and how that kind of works and fits together in the diversity of the Protestant tradition. And so now what I've done is, rather than looking for an opportunity to say, to say, well, let's talk this through again, because it's going to require an ongoing effort to really get into the nuances of some of those things. Yeah.
And I've seen that, like, you've really helped me with, like, I'll even hear from time to time, even just informal conversations, either at church or just, in our community, someone will just sort of be very passive about the Protestant tradition and being like, oh, well, that cheap grace stuff, luckily we don't believe in that. I'm like, wow, that is such a straw man perspective of what's really going on there. Because the more I've engaged with Protestants, there's not this thing of cheap grace that you're just saying, oh, no, I'm good now. I've accepted Jesus Christ, and we're good. And so just some of those, like, really superficial perspective, like, oh, actually there's so much more depth there. Yeah. Like, if you have opportunity to sit with it and lean into it and understand it, like, you'll realize it's much more complex and much more beautiful.
And that is the laborious aspect of interfaith dialogue. Yeah. Because if you really think about it, we even have to do that within our own faith paradigm. It's what I call theological shorthand, where, for example, just staying within my paradigm, one thing that 20th and 21st century Protestants have done a really bad job at is articulating what comes after this life as a theological shorthand. We die and we go to heaven. That is not what is at the foundation of Protestant doctrine, of evangelical teaching, of biblical articulation of what we feel the Bible teaches. So I have had to work even within my paradigm to say, let's not shorthand what we believe comes next. It's important for us to really talk not just about dying and going to heaven, but resurrection and the new heavens and the new earth. And it's not just playing harps on clouds or listening to Chris Tomlin sing for eternity. There's so much, there's more of a dynamic afterlife that we hold to that we don't really articulate. And, I know Latter-day Saints as well. There's certain aspects of belief that have been reduced to a shorthand or maybe a cultural explanation of certain doctrines that is like, well, hold on, let's work this through a little bit more to really get at what we actually believe. When you have to do that within your own paradigm, let alone across paradigms, it requires ongoing effort.
Yeah. And I love that framing of the doctrine shorthand. Or
doctrinal shorthand or theological shorthand.
Theological shorthand, where even this concept of families are forever in our faith tradition, like in primary, we sing the song, and then that sort of morphs as we intellectually mature to this thing of like, oh, heaven's actually very restricted, and there's this concept of no empty chair in heaven. Like, if a family member's not with us in heaven, is it really heaven? And then then it leads into sad heaven, and we're like, whoa, time out. Like, sometimes these shorthands get so carried away that, like you said, even our own tradition, where we're stating things where nowhere does it say that in our theology that heaven, temples and worthiness is all this geographic where we're living, and Johnny who didn't go to the temple or didn't go on a mission, he lives somewhere far out. Like, wow, like that is not a a grace-filled God. Like there's maybe more to this. A lot of it, what we say, I don't know how it works, but it's not that.
And that's where we've either shorthanded it or maybe we've over-defined something that is actually meant to be left in the realm of mystery.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's definitely something that is part of any faith paradigm, which makes it all the more important for us to have some patience with one another as we're working through some of those things in a interfaith paradigm.
Yeah. And then when we hear those shorthanded theologies in a different tradition, we want to step in and be like, Jeff, guess what?
Yeah.
We have let us tell you about the sequel. We got the 3 degrees of glory and the temples and the judgment. And
right.
I mean, it's awesome, right? And like, wait a minute, like don't take my shorthand and try and give your complexity to it and think that you're helping me. Like we get that there's probably more going on there.
Yeah.
And
again, that's just another level, because then what I have to do when I'm going back to my own people is like some of that shorthand from a Latter-day Saint standpoint has been codified in, the ideas surrounding Mormonism from an evangelical perspective. It's like, actually, that's not totally what they believe. Yes, it was taught that way maybe for a season, or somebody made a comment about that in a journal conference. That's not their official doctrine. So there's so much to do and so much work that needs to be done to maneuver through all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's worth the effort. I mean,
I think it is.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, we can edit this out, but this is a response I get a lot of times where I think so many people see you come on the scene and see you go so deep and spend so much time and be so gracious with just sitting with our theology and concepts. It's like, okay, like, is it coming yet? Like, is that conversion going to happen? Right. And that cognitive dissonance when you don't jump in the font and join us, and now it's Bishop McCullough and it's awesome, right? Like, I don't think mentally a lot of people, and I don't mean to generalize this, but it's easy. I can see sort of the train of thought where they're like, I can't reconcile this. He's just doing it for the money. That's what it is. It's YouTube, and YouTube's writing him a check, and he's just right. And I'm like, I don't know if you really know how that works. And
I don't know if you know how much YouTube actually pays.
Right, exactly, right. Or
let me put it this way. If I wanted to make money, I would not be doing what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Or they fill in the gaps of being like, what it is that he leads a church and he wants more people to come to his church. I'm like, in these private moments, I'm like, well, actually, do you know he's not necessarily an active pastor at this moment? Like there's no benefit of one more person showing up to his church. There's no financial benefit.
I'm an active pastor. Okay, but I'm not the lead pastor.
Not the lead pastor, right.
It's not a church that I planted.
Right.
And I actually don't publicize where we're ministering right now.
Yeah.
If I was really wanting to grow a church, I would have been like, what's up, everybody? I'm in Utah. Here's where my church is. Let's do this. Yeah. I won't do that. Right. In fact, I'm pretty guarded about even revealing where we're ministering right now. One, because I don't want to be the attraction. Whatever you do on Sunday morning, Jesus needs to be the attraction. Yeah. So please don't come to see Pastor Jeff.
Right.
And two, I need that time with my family to go to church and to minister in my context. And it's okay if people will show up and they want to say hi and all that type of thing. But the moment I start publicizing it, suddenly my Sunday mornings are consumed with people wanting to come to me and talk to me and all that other stuff. And I need that time with my family and with my church family. So all of those are, going back to what you're saying, these assumptions that people are making about my motives and why I'm doing it and why I'm still doing it, that I can explain. But I appreciate the opportunity to kind of speak into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And because there's, even with leading saints, like this is my full-time job. I get a salary from the organization that's set by a board of directors. There's so many other ways to make a good living that it has to be some level of passion for me to show up. And to me, I'd rather look forward to Mondays than make 3 times what I'm making now, to have the wealth, right? So that always kind of breaks my heart when my people say that, Latter-day Saints, like, oh, well, he must be doing it for the money, or he must be doing it so his church can grow big. I'm like, man, that's not... It hurts you when you say that, because that is so shallow and not what's going on.
Isn't it also a little bit sad that that's the only logical explanation for somebody who in good faith is trying to bridge a gap that has long been filled with so much contention? Yeah. Like, that's one of the things that Joy frequently says. When she looks at the channel and she's kind of like, wow, like it's pretty interesting that so many people are interested in just someone being kind, and that there has to be something more behind it. and it's, I don't know, I won't get into so much of a social commentary on that, but
Yeah.
it's been the same thing for me since day one. And that is, how can we move beyond what we subscribe to in our religious systems to see Christ high and lifted up, and how that impacts each one of us individually.
Yeah.
I think that's actually what Jesus did. He was willing to transcend religious systems so that people would clearly see the heart of the Father. And that's what we'll continue to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think someone like yourself, like our community, our greater Christian community needs that model of like, here's some things I'm trying and this is what's working. And, obviously something's working there that, you're building those bridges. So I think it's, and I'm the type, like, is the concept of priestcraft a thing in Protestant? Like, how do you?
No, it's not. And that actually makes what I do pretty tricky.
Yeah.
Because, we kind of did step out in faith vocationally by not taking the career path of a pastor, which is a little bit more secure than what I'm doing as some weird YouTube pastor thing. And also even take, a step of faith in moving to Utah, which was a big move for our family. And in the Protestant evangelical world, every church is financially independent. There are very, very few churches in America that are being fed by a larger economical body of some sort. I mean, there might be some, but very, very few. So it's not uncommon to hear a Protestant or evangelical paradigm saying like, hey, we'd love for you to consider giving. Giving is a part of worship, and it's not so much giving back to God, but like expressing our gratitude to everything that He's poured into our lives. So that's a really common thing. We do it on Sunday mornings when it comes to collecting tithes, or even there's a lot of faith-based nonprofits that say, hey, we'd love if you'd consider supporting this and giving. In the Latter-day Saint world, I show up to that and I'm like, hey, yeah, we are, wanting to do this and, support our livelihood. But at the same time, it's not about the money. It's not about getting rich. If you'd like to give to this, feel free to support. And immediately it's like, Priestcraft,
right.
You're just trying to make money. And they're calling me Nehor and all these other names. And it's like, whoa, where did this come from? And as people have explained it to me, I'm like, I can see where you're coming from, especially because there's a stigma attached to the evangelical world where there are some pastors who've abused the idea of, feel free to give, or the televangelists are like, if you give $100 right now, the Lord will triple that, pressed down, shaken together, running over type of stuff. So it also makes sense where it's like, you're just another one of those money hungry evangelicals. So that's tricky. Yeah. But at the same time, the provision of what is needed for me and my family is not predicated on how effectively I can raise funds. It's on the one who provides, the provider, the Lord. So, okay, we can work with this. Yeah.
And I think I'll put this out, and I could be wrong. Welcome any comments back or perspective. But I think this concept, this dynamic of priestcraft is like, I don't think Latter-day Saints realize how much of a Latter-day Saint thing that concept is. And so for you being a pastor who's making money, whether it's from a church or from another project where you're, sharing, or, a passion project like that, like in your mind, I think it's, or I'll speak for the Latter-day Saint side, like in our mind, that it's easier to get to this place of like, whoa, like you're making money?
Yeah.
Like, you're not supposed to do that. Like what? Like when in reality, you look at the definition of priestcraft and it's more of like those who set themselves up as a light to the world, right? As if like, hey, like you were saying, like you don't go to church to make it about Pastor Jeff, you go to church to make it about Jesus, right? And so even leading saints, like if I do this, and I've been very intentional over the years, I don't want to like frame myself as, I'm the Latter-day Saint leadership guru, like buy my 6 CD set or, whatever it is. Yeah, I just want to facilitate. Yeah, that was a while ago. It crashed and burned. But I want to facilitate greater light and knowledge and conversations and things like that. And as long as I feel like I'm called to this ministry, then I will keep doing it. And of course I will make money, right? And I would contest any Latter-day Saint who has a problem with people making money, doing a faith-related thing. It's like, I just don't think you understand what priestcraft is in our faith tradition. And it's easy. Sometimes I hear that there's something wrong for a pastor to make money doing pastoral things. But I'm like, you guys, we have buildings full of individuals called the 70s who are making money, who get a stipend, who
Right.
the corner of the 12, like they get stipend, they get a money to live on to do this thing. That doesn't necessarily mean Priestcraft is going on, right? So anyways, I think a lot of people go to that and they're kind of like, Priestcraft got him.
Yeah.
You know, that's too bad. Like, no, there's more going on here.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is I know very few pastors, like personally, and I know hundreds of pastors who make very good money.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of what we were saying a minute ago. If they really wanted to make money, if they wanted to get rich, they would not be youth pastors or lead pastors at churches. You know, the average church size in America is 100 or less people. Yes, you have these big mega churches and all these other things out there, and they are the billboards that people see. But most churches are bivocational or volunteer pastors, or pastors that are making well below sort of an average wage. So it's an unfortunate misconception that I think some of it comes from a misunderstanding from a Latter-day Saint perspective. But going back to what I said a second ago too, evangelicals have also abused that, some prominent ones, and that doesn't help matters.
Yeah. And I just think like, and I really want to push past like this concept of that, okay, well, great, you can make money, but you kind of got to be poor church mice like that. You can't make, like, you got to be barely hanging on, right? Where it's like, no, like people should be rewarded for creating positive content, because look at what we're up against. The content creation industry, from, you know, streaming services to everything going on with TikTok and things, like people are making millions of dollars to create trash and things that are poison to our communities. And so I hope every content creator is rewarded beautifully. Even if they are considered rich, it's like, great, keep going. We need you, right? And it's really comes down, just like all things, where's the heart? You know what? And that's where Christ went. Was like, you know, where with the you know, the rich man of being like, will you give it up, all of it, to follow me? You know,
Right?
And
and that's actually been a really, just for me personally, it's been a really nice part of my journey. And that before, when I was strictly fully vocational in pastoral ministry, when I was back in St. Louis, since moving out here, doing Hello Saints, I do a couple other production things, but even the pastoral work that I am doing right now, it actually doesn't come with any sort of stipend. So, and that it does feel good. So there's a merit to like even how bishops and stake presidents and even mission presidents, those individuals who are giving of their time and willingness, I actually do respect that as well. So, and have appreciated, whenever I was going through my master's program, I had a professor who said he believes that every pastor should either be volunteer or bivocational. And he's saying this to a bunch of people who are probably going to make a living on, you know, being in ministry. And I was like, well, that's very provocative. I don't know if I agree with that. And now here I am, where I'm able to serve the church without relying on a paycheck for that. And there is something kind of beautiful and freeing about that. So I can see it from all angles, and have been able to experience it from all angles. Yeah. So,
well, I hope people, you know, taking time to just have a deeper discussion about that, because it's these tropes that kind of people throw out and be like, now we got him defined. That's what he is. Oh, that's too bad. Anyways. Oh, look, he went to conference.
Right. Yep.
You know, so, are you worried, like, at this point, how long has it been that you've done Hello Saints?
It's been about 3.5 years.
Okay.
Since launching the channel.
Yeah.
I started recording the videos about 4 years ago.
Yeah. Are you worried about running out of content ideas, or?
I don't necessarily view it, I don't view what I'm doing as like coming up with great content. I mean, that's always going to be there. Yeah. But this is more about chronicling my journey, exploring. And then I'm actually moving from chronicling my journey to curating this space, continuing to curate this space. So, I mean, I guess there is somewhat of a shelf life, or, you know, an expiration date on the original value proposition of the channel, that like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to sacrament meeting and I don't know what this means. Where's the front door? Now that I've been to sacrament meeting, you know, a dozen times, I get that novelty is wearing off, but it's never for me been about the views. It's been about the viewers. And, so where there are those that want to maintain this conversation and continue to curate this safe space for interfaith dialogue between Protestants and evangelicals, that's what we're going to keep doing. So I think there's plenty of opportunity and space there. So no, I don't really worry about running out of content, even though there might be certain angles that, I can only do pastor's first time so many times, right? Because maybe I'll start making like pastor's second time, going to fast and test.
Or it gets the pastor's first time at activities days with the 11-year-olds. Well, looks like we got some 11-year-olds here,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's but you're not necessarily worried about running out of content. I think a lot of people are like, well, do you feel like there's an end to this journey, or what does that journey look like after you've done all the big clicks?
Since launching the channel, I've said from the very, very beginning, may not have said it directly in a Hello Saints video, but I've said it in other contexts and tied to my nonprofit that oversees Hello Saints, is I would like to expand this into other faith paradigms. So I've already started working on a potential Hello Catholics channel.
Cool.
I would love to do a Hello Orthodox channel.
Like Orthodox Protestants, like
they wouldn't be considered Protestant, but Orthodox Christianity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they technically,
that's kind of a new dynamic I'm understanding more. But
yeah, I mean, brief history in 7 seconds. The Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church parted ways around 1054 AD.
Okay.
And it wasn't until about the 1500s that the Protestant Reformation peeled away from the Orthodox.
So they've been on
Roman Catholics.
Their own journey from the Catholic Church longer than.
Yeah, and it's a pretty fascinating journey.
Yeah.
So that would be neat, and I think warranted. I think especially Hello Catholics, because there's still some weirdness between Roman Catholics and Protestants. So a fun endeavor that could also benefit the collective interfaith conversation.
Yeah.
But for now, resources being what they are, I remain, and will, even after, if I would launch those channels, remain committed to Hello Saints being an indefinite endeavor.
Yeah. Because like you said, curating it's not just about your journey. It's about how can we invite others in their own journey of understanding their neighbor, understanding their beliefs. And
this is more than an idea.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't just an idea capitalized 4 years ago. I believe from a spiritual standpoint, the Lord is doing something significant in the LDS church and the Evangelical church. So that has always been from the beginning one of the most important motivators to doing this. I believe God is up to something, and I want to be a part of that when it comes to how he's moving in and through the Latter-day Saint paradigm, Protestant evangelical paradigm. So as long as he's at work, which I believe he still is, and I think he's just getting started, I want to be there. I want to be a part of that. That's what I was invited into by the Lord, more than this is the idea I had for a YouTube channel.
Right.
So,
yeah. Another, as I meet with people in more informal settings and they're asking questions about you and things, is, I can tell those that are a little more skeptical of your intentions, which we've sort of covered. But I often go to, like, you may not understand, like, yeah, there's probably a segment of Latter-day Saints who are skeptical of Pastor Jeff, but there's a significant segment of evangelicals who are skeptical of Pastor Jeff. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I take it from both sides.
Yeah.
100%. In fact, most recently I've had to go through a pretty tricky couple months where there have been some very intense things coming from a certain sect of evangelical individuals, and it's actually gotten kind of serious in some ways. The thing that I find interesting is they make the same accusations towards me that I hear from people on the very extreme Latter-day Saint side, that I'm a fake, that I'm being paid by the LDS church or something like that. The whole wolf in sheep's clothing, I've gotten that from both sides. In fact, this most recent group is saying that this is a wolf in sheep's clothing. So I find that kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain how people on the furthest polar opposite extremes are accusing me of the same things. It's just interesting, which my dad tells me that must mean I'm doing something right then.
Yeah.
If, we got to continue to walk that knife's edge of maintaining that healthy tension, as opposed to extreme versus the other. So
you find, I imagine, generally speaking, it's always easier to take criticism from a outside party rather than your people. How do you reconcile or process when it feels like your people, your team is coming after you?
It's a good question. I definitely feel more defensive with Protestants when they're coming at me than I do with Latter-day Saints. Because you didn't invite me over. I knocked on the door and asked to come in, okay? Which is very ironic if you really think about that. Love missionary culture. No, but so it makes sense that it's like, hey, wait a minute. Like, I didn't necessarily invite you over. And there's some people in the back room being like, I don't want you here. Go away. That makes sense. Yeah. From the Protestant standpoint, those are like, what are you doing over there? What do you think you're doing? Like, that's not how you're supposed to do it. That kind of gets to me a little bit more. It's like, really? So how have we been doing it? And how has that been working out for us? Right. So I think I get a little bit more fighting curiosity with criticism.
Yeah.
with some of my own people. I have to temper that. And thankfully I have a wife that helps me do that, because otherwise I'd probably get a little bit more cranky.
We need a fund that we raise for the spouses of content creators, and they send them to Hawaii and on trips, and because that's a whole nother dynamic.
It is. So. But yeah, I find myself getting a little bit more activated when I'm taking it from Protestant evangelicals.
Yeah. And I mean, I hate to just segment people, but you've introduced me to several pastors in the community here who I'm like, oh, you're just like Pastor Jeff. Like, you're not, we've been talking for 10 minutes and you haven't brought up hell once. Like, this is great. You know, like,
that's why I started the channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when I'm seeing other people who are pastors creating YouTube content, I'm like, I don't want Latter-day Saints to have this perception of pastors. That's, if they feel that's how they need to do their thing, okay. But 99% of the pastors, I don't take that position. So I was actually wanting to represent pastors that I know, pastors that I run with. Like, you can go on YouTube and see what a different kind of pastor, or what I would say is pastors that are more common than you might think. That was a huge part of launching Hello Saints. Because to your point, most pastors that I know and that I run with are they're wired very similar to how I am. Yeah. And I don't know if a lot of Latter-day Saints realize that.
Right. Yeah. And because we've all had a negative experience with an evangelical. Usually it's a pastor, right? Mine was at a gas station in Tracy, California in 2022 and
2002.
Yes, thank you. 2002. Yeah. It was a while ago.
Don't try to trick us into thinking you're younger. You did not just get back from your mission.
I didn't.
Elder Frank.
It might shock some of you, but I didn't. And so then we kind of project that on others of being like, I don't even want to talk to that guy, because if he comes at me with those scriptures again, I just want to have dinner with my family here.
Yeah.
You know, so it builds walls that really aren't there.
Well, and the other thing is probably one of the most rewarding things of what I do is when pastors, especially in Utah, message me and they're like, thanks for doing what you're doing. You're like, you're representing how I pastor my church in Orem, Utah, or Bluffdale or Draper. Encouraging for me, because I know how important it is to do what we can to dispel some of those stigmas that warranted or unwarranted exist.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, like, and maybe you don't want to go there because we'll probably say some general statements that we don't want anybody to take personally per se. How would you describe the evangelical church or Protestant church dynamic in Utah? Because you've kind of tried to break this down to me in our private conversations, and I don't know how much, it's easier to maybe break it down when it's not being recorded, but how would you explain that? Because
that's a great question.
For Latter-day Saints, I remember going to the Well Church you had introduced me to that church, and I'm just like, you people have been here the whole time? Like, oftentimes we're just going to church and it's so heavy in our Utah culture as Latter-day Saint cultures that we forget that you're there. I'm sorry, but we do. Mm-hmm. And so there's actually a whole community that's vibrant and opinionated, and even in that community, they're sometimes critical of you.
Yeah, and the evangelical church in Utah is growing right now quite a bit, and there are definitely different kinds of Protestant churches. We'll just put it that way. They're the kind that are a bit of a holy huddle. They're like, it's us four and no more. We're here amongst the Latter-day Saints, and we're on one side of things, they're on the other side, and we need to hold down the fort. And those are the ones who might even feel that it's important to go out and proselytize and try to make sure Latter-day Saints know that they're in a false religion and they need to join, they need to leave where they are and join. So there's that type of Protestant church. There are other Protestant churches where they're willing to acknowledge, there's definitely differences, and there's significant differences, but we're not going to make that a matter of our identity per se. We're just going to do what we do, be good neighbors with Latter-day Saints, and maintain some honesty about where there are differences, but also just be very welcoming and kind, and meet people where they are. That's probably more in line with where I find myself running within the Protestant churches. And then you've got another group of Protestant churches where you almost wouldn't know they're in Utah. They just don't even factor in the unique faith heritage that exists here. That you could pick up a church and drop it in, at Venice Beach, and it would function almost the exact same way. So they're not necessarily, they're probably aware. Well, they are aware of the religious culture here, but they just it in some ways at all. I'm not saying any one of those is totally right or totally wrong, but those are probably the three types of churches you're going to encounter here in Utah.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking of the dynamic of because it's been such a blessing with your help to be exposed to these churches, meet the pastors, attend their services from time to time. I've taken my children to several of their services, and I've found it so healthy for my children to, one, I think it helps them appreciate and identify that church is not the same everywhere, and our church tradition is a certain way, and then it opens up conversations and things like that. But sometimes there's this fear of I don't know, can I just walk in there? Where, and I'll be honest, a mutual friend of ours who's a pastor's, as I've moved to American Fork, I'm like, I have been thinking of finding a church I can go visit here. And he's like, well, let me make sure that the right ones to go to a little bit. I don't want to make it bigger than it is, but I'm like, oh wait, I should be cautious about which ones I walk into, being the majority religion, and then they know exactly, or they have a perception of who I am. Where if I'm in Missouri and I walk into Evangelical and say I'm a Latter-day Saint, they may be like, they don't have this heaviness of the general culture with it.
Yeah, for sure.
So what comes to mind?
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point. If you would go to almost any evangelical church outside of the Intermountain West, most of them don't even know enough about the LDS Church to be like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
They'll just kind of be like, okay.
Or to preach at me, or feel like they need to, or
somebody might know a little bit of something and want to engage you. And, one thing that, let's just be honest about both of our paradigms, we're always thinking about ways to proselytize. And that's the missionary.
That baptism question's coming up on my list. Anyways.
It's always in the back of our minds. But in Utah, there are some who, if you walk into certain churches, it's not like they're going to punch you in the face and tell you to leave. But as soon as they see that you are a devout Latter-day Saint and you aren't necessarily there to explore traditional Christianity and to maybe leave the LDS Church, they might either directly or indirectly say, you're not totally welcome here. Like you're either pursuing truth or you're not. And if you're not, then you don't need to be here. And I'm not speaking for every church. I'm saying there might be some churches like that, which is where that pastor's coming from. Where there are other churches who are definitely going to be like, yeah, we see that you're a Latter-day Saint. We're glad you're here. Like a non-Latter-day Saint paradigm, because we're non-Latter-day Saint. If you're cool with that, then that's fine. We don't want to make you uncomfortable. I definitely think that that's a wise move on that pastor's part.
Yeah, and is there any advice? Because, not that they're going to be awful towards you, but someone may walk into church and be like, oh wow, that pastor on the YouTube is much more welcoming than this guy, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there should we just try that local church down the path just to?
You can do whatever you want,
right? I guess. And am I making something out of nothing? I don't know.
Not necessarily. It depends on what your own comfort level is.
Yeah.
There's some people who served on their mission in Atlanta, Georgia, and they are used to people just getting in their face and slamming the door in their face. And they'd probably be just fine, rolling the dice and walking into church. And if they experience that, they'll be like, well, maybe I'll try a different one next week.
Yeah.
Where there might be others who are going to feel a little bit more cautious and not comfortable with it. This is a general rule of thumb that I'm not necessarily even saying it's a recommendation. I'm just saying you can follow this if you want. In Utah, usually the larger the church is, you're probably going to be able to experience a little bit less friction. You're probably a little bit, you won't get as much pushback, whereas it's a little bit more of a roll of the dice the smaller the church is. If you walk into church, that church, and I think that's just indicative of smaller churches in general can get, all Latter-day Saints aside, a bit cliquish or
that's where that holy huddle sometimes happens.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and this is not to say that every small church in Utah is dangerous.
I told you this was a little bit just dangerous to talk about.
I'm just saying if you are going to step out, and if you go to some of the larger churches, they're a little bit more savvy to making sure like we're going to have a diverse type of people walking in on a Sunday morning. So they're pretty good at that.
Yeah. Interesting. As far as like the converting dynamic, like one response I had is I'll tell people, they'll be a little skeptical, like, well, I'm just concerned that Pastor Jeff is maybe creating doubt and causing people to question their Latter-day Saint tradition and go to an evangelical direction. And I often say, you know what, like out of all the people I've met, I've never met one person who has questioned their faith because of Hello Saints. Like maybe they were already on that path and they're like, maybe some of that, that tricky, complex conversation is like triggering some of that. But I mean, what's your thought on that? Like, are you getting emails or like, thank you, Pastor Jeff, I finally joined a Protestant church?
No, but I think one thing that I'm actually curious as to what about what I'm doing would make someone say that?
Right.
I'm actually curious to know, like, why would a Latter-day Saint think that? And that's not necessarily rhetorical. I mean, I'm open to you even telling me.
Right. Because and that's to me where I'm like I almost want to go to a place, and I know I'm simplifying this, but I'm like, well, maybe if these videos cause that, it was either these videos or something else. Like if your faith isn't mature enough to sit with like complex doctrines that are often in disagreement, like I don't know what to tell you, because we live in a complex world, and I think that's a healthy place to go to hear how people think differently and be okay with it and try to understand. And
it's an eccentricity to the Latter-day Saint paradigm, though, I think. I don't know if Latter-day Saints are aware of that. To say that somebody coming in and expressing different beliefs is dangerous and trying to cause. That's historically in my tradition, that is eccentric. Because most often, I'm not saying it every time, we're never speaking in rule of thumb, I'm just saying
right.
We actually promote people going out and exploring what other faiths believe and engaging in dialogue with people that might challenge what you believe. That's one of the best ways to test the truthfulness of your convictions. And so I have found that in a Latter-day Saint paradigm, somebody who's coming in and offering a different view is seen as a threat because, and you can correct me, but there has been a culture of leadership or a culture of maybe even just positioning that I have been told, that Latter-day Saints are told, well, you shouldn't look into these things. Don't go and research this over here. That's anti-Mormon. Don't talk to these people or hear what they have to say, because that is, they're going to just give you more stuff to put on your shelf. Everything that I just said right there is very Latter-day Saint specific. Whereas in my paradigm, 10 years ago, I'm teaching a systematic theology class in my church. It was a 2-year class that goes all the way through the scriptures and what we believe on various doctrines. I would encourage the people as a pastor in my class to go to apologetics websites that oppose Protestant Christianity and to engage with people who are challenging what you believe. I would encourage people to do that. Look into it. So I think that's one thing that I am learning, and it kind of helps. It makes sense why people might say, oh, you're just here to cause me to doubt my faith or to spread seeds of doubt. That is a new concept to me. Yeah. Because we don't see somebody challenging your faith as a bad thing. We actually see it as a good thing. So yeah.
And I would, from a Latter-day Saint perspective, when I hear that, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, but I'm like, you have a little bit of immaturity in your faith that you need to sit with, and because there is a level of inoculation that we all experience by hearing opposing views or complicated church history or doctrine that is unique to us, or whatever it is, where you have to get to a place where reconcile. And I'm not just saying like, I've figured it out, I've arrived, I figured out how to do that. But, it's a journey where I think like, I don't think the answer is, well, yeah, just stop listening. And to your point, I think there was a feeling of that like early on in the internet age where, wow, suddenly all this information's grappling with how do we move forward where we want to teach a certain theology, but then there's all this information out there. So, hey, why don't just ignore it? Let's try that for a while. Yeah. And I think, and again, I don't think it was like an official church statement of of doing that. I don't think it was, an official like direction that way, but it was a cultural thing that now, the church has been much more, the church is an institution, and our leaders been much more intentional of saying, actually questions are okay. Actually research is good. Like go out there and get the information, or the problem is not studying it enough.
Sure.
That gets you in trouble.
Well, yeah, I mean, just one good example that is, from what I understand before, like the CES letter, like, nope, you don't even read it.
Yeah.
Like don't even go there. And now there's like BYU professors who are going through the CES letter and creating content on it, or even other Latter-day Saint content creators who are addressing it and testing what's stated in the CES letter. So, yeah, that is one of those very interesting things that that caused me to scratch my head initially.
Yeah. And that's what I want. I kind of just want to put that out there. If people are sort of on that path of being like I think there's more you just need. I would encourage you to sit with, not because I've got it figured out and you don't, but that's I just don't think that's a good reason,
Yeah.
And then when it comes to like, obviously we have a deep tradition of missionary work of proselytizing and seeing the people, getting the pictures, baptismal jumpsuits. It's happening. This is beautiful. Look at this family coming into the waters of baptism and all that. And so we want that ending for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And recently I was in a conversation where I kind of said, well, I'm just saying, like in a hypothetical parallel universe, Pastor Jeff comes to me and said, I prayed like I'm in, I'm going to get baptized. A part of me would sort of be like, ooh, like, well, I mean, you're kind of my guide to understand my other fellow men of evangelicals. And so, I mean, I guess that's great. But, and to me, I think there's a more mature way of seeing your path and what you're doing, of saying like, what if, let's step into the paradigm that, we are God's restored gospel with his authorized authority and the ordinances, all that. But what if actually God doesn't want Pastor Jeff to join the church? Because like you said, there's something happening in this relationship. And I'm talking about the Latter-day Saint evangelical and all the work you do. There's something happening there.
Yes.
That's going to be more fruitful for God than Pastor Jeff getting baptized.
I think it goes the other direction. I've talked to plenty of Latter-day Saints, truly, who have said, I'm not bought in anymore. I have an undeniable relationship with Jesus, and my hope is in him and him alone. I'm going to sacrament meeting on Sunday. Like, I'm not going to subscribe to all of the things, but I don't believe I'm supposed to leave this spiritual heritage and tradition and culture that is hardwired into where I am. And I think God's going to use me in that, in a lot of important ways. It feels provocative. It feels uncomfortable, right?
Right. Yeah.
But that's where, you're talking about an alternate universe where I come to you and say, I'm going to get baptized. And so in that alternate universe, you're fist pumping and being like, yeah. But in this universe, you're saying, but maybe not. Maybe he's supposed to say, I kind of feel like he needs to stay on that side of the banks if he's going to build the bridge. And my positioning on that, if we go into a similar, I don't even know if it's an alternate universe, but that's where our conversations have been super interesting and helpful for me, beyond peering into Latter-day Saint content and giving my reaction to the experiences and the history. Hearing you articulate how you walk through your faith and your relationship with Jesus and what he means to you has been huge for me, huge. And that's where I feel more and more comfortable listening to a Latter-day Saint articulate their relationship with Jesus, how they're desiring to see Jesus, how to experience him, how to follow him, how to be one of his disciples. Where at the end of the day, Kurt, deep down inside, do you think it would be good for me to get baptized into the LDS church? I'm going to answer for you, even though you think there's some benefit for me to be outside of it. I know the proselyte, as Latter-day Saints say it, the proselyting aspect of who you are, that you would say, well, of course.
Yeah. And I would say in the eternities, sure, I hope Jeff takes that. But I think there's more going on here than just like, we got one more,
right?
And he's an influencer.
And see, for me, and this is where it gets provocative for me, is I would say, your reconciled relationship with God through what Christ has done on the cross, and you putting your faith in him and him alone, aside from the application of ordinances and temple work and all the other things, if that is the prevailing reality of your condition before God, do I think you're better off in some ways outside of the LDS paradigm with all the other activities in the proselytizing part of who I am, I would say, yeah, I do. I do think you'd be better off outside. That said, do I think that you must leave the LDS church in order to be conditionally right before God and have a right relationship with him and to be doing his work as a follower of Jesus? That's where I'm saying you stay where you feel you're supposed to be for now. And I am totally comfortable leaving that between you and the Lord.
Yeah.
And not every evangelical is.
Yeah.
So
that's true. It's true. Let me ask about as we start to wrap up here, just from a pastoral place of you sitting in your church or you're thinking of the next, sermon you're giving, what keeps you up at night as a pastor when you consider the church, the church meaning, your flock, Jesus' flock, not the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. But what keeps you up at night just when you consider your people and faith and sanctification that they're experiencing or all of that?
Man, that's a good question. I don't get asked questions like this too often because that's actually at the heart of the reality of who I am, how I'm wired, and what I do. But I don't talk through that very often in the Hello Saints world because it's on the riverbank of interfaith dialogue. So this is going to be all Latter-day Saint and interfaith dialogue aside.
Yeah.
We live in a world right now where cultural Christianity has been conflated with an authentic relationship with Jesus. And that has manifested in a type of American church culture that it has gotten in some ways out of focus and has pockets of toxicity. Because we think that being in Protestant evangelical and conflating a value system with our conditionality, which is something that we're all going to do, results in these cultural rules and expectations that I think actually obstruct the gospel as opposed to clarify it. Okay. And let me just dissect that a little bit more. Our value system is informed by our faith, but it is distinct from our conditional experience and relationship with God. There's definitely overlap. There's a reason why you can have a Democrat born-again Christian and a Republican born-again Christian, or a conservative or a liberal, or, however you want to slice these value systems. And I only reach for those things because those are the most clearly, socially demarcated value systems. Because my right standing before God is something that is needing attention regardless of my value. Is it true that once we are in relationship with the Lord, that's going to inform our value system and all that other? Sure. But there is a distinction there. What's happening in the evangelical church is this cultural gatekeeping that unless you do evangelical Christianity this way, you stand for these issues, you oppose these issues, you do things that way, then you need to check yourself, and you I don't even know if you're saved. That narrative, that paradigm, that posture has caused a lot of problems, and it's ostracizing a lot of people. And I think that is what keeps me up at night, especially when you add to it. And this is a lot of insider baseball, so Latter-day Saints might have to be working really hard.
Good. No, I'm following. Okay, I'm following.
But there's also a certain aspect of the American church. That has become very corporate minded, if I'm going to be completely honest, where we are church planting, which is really good. And it takes a certain type of person to plant a church, a certain type of pastor who's very entrepreneurial, who knows how to run an organization, who knows how to, negotiate loans and, properties, but also be very charismatic and people want to be around them and be a good teacher on a team. All of those ingredients for someone who plants a church in America, when that church starts to grow, some of those characteristics for a pastor can become a petri dish for narcissism, because I'm the guy that started this church. I'm the guy that helped make all this happen. I'm the one that people really like and started coming to the church. And this is where you start to get these larger churches where these pastors have become the attraction, where they've become sort of the one that is the main event, center stage. that is another aspect of Protestant evangelical Christianity that has become problematic, and why you start to see these celebrity pastors who are going through moral failures, or they're blowing out, or they're becoming bullies and they're getting canceled, and all these other things. So these are all different aspects of where the Protestant evangelical church has either lost its focus, or they're seeing themselves in a place of virtual elevation that's causing issues. And all of that, like, where's the gospel in that? Where's Jesus in that? Where's the come to me, those of you who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest? It's something that you've probably even heard me preach on, because I know you watch some of my sermons. Yeah. It troubles me. Yeah. Because I feel like those are the people, the beginning of Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount, the citizens of heaven, that get lost in the shuffle when our church construct turns into that. And so that's a pretty deep dive into how, when I turn around and face my people where I'm seeing things, the work that we have to do on our end when it comes to some of those things.
So when you talk about like that gatekeeping dynamic, and when you're talking about that, I'm like I'm thinking of all the cultural dynamics that we experience. I'm like, yep, that checks out. Yep, that checks out. And I even find myself kind of conflicted at times where it's like, well, I mean, we got to draw the line somewhere, right? Like at some point there is a standard to do that. So maybe unpack that more. Like, what does that look like on a Sunday morning as people are showing up to church, or like, how does that manifest itself in the culture? But
I think, like, where do we feel it's important? How are we prioritizing where we draw the line of this standard?
Right.
Is it that you hold a certain political position? Is it that you're supporting or opposing certain social causes? I'm not saying that shouldn't be part of a faith conversation. It's okay for that to be part of a faith conversation. But when that becomes the litmus test, that all of those things right there are, again, in that virtue, are the value systems of people. When we have conditionally people that need care and triage spiritually and clarification on where they are before God and what it means to walk in relation with Him, that's where we need to draw the line at saying, yes, there's a place for conversations like this, but that isn't the point. This is something that I say often in that same theology class I was telling you about earlier. I was teaching on Genesis. What does the Bible teach about Genesis chapter 1? And here within the evangelical church, you've got very passionate positions of an old earth or a young earth. And we talked through it for the majority of the class. And then I said, but at the end of the day, nothing matters, whether it's old earth or long earth. What matters is that we serve an almighty sovereign God who spoke all things into existence. That's what matters. And a friend of mine raised his hand and said, if it didn't matter, then what have you been doing for the past hour? It's like, don't tell me it doesn't matter. It does. I think what you're trying to say is it's not the point. Yeah. And that's been a really helpful thing for me, is there are certain aspects of how we practice our faith and how we integrate our value systems, but let's allow those things to matter without making them the point. What is the point of the church? The point of the church is to be the light of Jesus to the world and heralds of the good news that you can have hope and right relationship with God through Christ. Like, that's where we need to meet people. That's the point of what we do has to be. And when that becomes a side priority to these other things, we've suddenly made what isn't the point. So.
Yeah. And you know, these litmus tests and things, it's like, we just have to be really aware when these sort of crop up in our culture, right? Where it's like, wait a minute, are we determining the relationship here and their engagement in our faith community because of something that's not the point of redemption, right? And, you know, through Jesus Christ and those things, right?
Yeah.
And to be okay to sit with that. And really, I think this is it's the same conversation we were having earlier with you coming into our community. Like, are we holding Jeff to a litmus test because, well, you can do this, but you better get baptized at the end of this, or else you can't do this,
right?
You know,
or everything you've done is null and void.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas, like, actually, there's more going on here that's a greater point of the gospel.
Yeah,
right.
And it feels messy because it's so nuanced. It feels dangerous and risky and provocative at times. Okay, I just described Jesus' ministry. Everything about Jesus' ministry was messy and nuanced and provocative and risky and dangerous, and people didn't know how to make sense of it, so he took it from every side. I think it's okay. Those complexities aren't necessarily an indicator that you're doing it right or wrong per se. To me, it always comes back to the centrality of who Christ is, and that being the priority of what we're doing in any ministry, whether it's within our evangelical churches or within interfaith dialogue.
Yeah.
So,
and I think history's shown, going back to sort of your motto, that it is those who approach those situations with curiosity that benefited the most, rather than criticism, right?
Yeah.
Like, what Pharisee do we hold up and talk about? You know, I mean, there's a few, right? But those were the curious ones.
Yeah.
You know, even though, it was in the dark of the night of, what's his name?
Nicodemus.
Thank you. It lost me for a minute. It was in the dark of the night where Nicodemus met with Christ. He was still in a place of curiosity rather than let's stone this preacher, because he's out of bounds, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's in whatever faith tradition or social tradition we're in, it's that curiosity that can be so powerful.
Yeah. I mean, every invitation we see in the scriptures is the Lord saying, ask, seek, draw near, lean in. You know, those are the very aspects, various invitations that we are given, because it's when we're willing to do that, as opposed to lean back, cross your arms. Like, I don't necessarily see the Lord saying, I'll meet you there.
Or that simple, come and see.
Yeah. Come and see.
Come and see.
Come and follow me. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
All right. And the other thing I was going to mention earlier that I just need to insert in here, if for your fellow pastors in Utah, if you want to create an inviting place, like, you can't just have coffee, guys. Okay, like,
totally agree.
There's some great hot chocolate options. Diet Coke could be plentiful.
Get some soda, like get Swig to show up every Sunday and do some dirty sodas.
But it was an indicator to me. I mean, like, maybe you don't want me here if you're just serving coffee. Like, it's.
Well, we do have donuts as well. Like, you can drink water.
They always go by so fast though, and I'm usually late for church. So.
Yeah, well, I agree. Yeah, I think if you're gonna have coffee, that's fine, but throw in some herbal tea and hot chocolate while you're at it. Yeah.
Look at this guy. He's learned some things.
Yeah, see, got it. Nailed it.
What else? Any like burning question or concept or anything you want to talk about before we wrap up, or do we do it?
Well, maybe I'll just ask you a question if I can kick into interviewer mode for a second. Right. Do you get the sense that things are shifting at all in the LDS faith when it comes to interfaith engagement or even openness to connect with evangelicals?
I think I'm self-aware enough where I am often intrigued and encouraged when I interview people, like in we call it our communication councils outside of Utah, where and there's some dynamic ones going on, but in Utah, but it's much on a more of a regional level that not everybody sees or understands. But I'm very encouraged with the work happening with Latter-day Saints on interfaith level outside of Utah as I hear these stories. And so I guess I don't have a good pulse on it just because I'm kind of insulated in my bubble here in Utah. But I sure hope we are, and I think there's a shift there. Even you see things, even the work done by President Nelson with, I think with NAACP or others, like there's a lot more outreach happening, or we're not as insular as maybe we were in the 80s and 90s. So. I think there's a shift, but I maybe don't know. Yeah.
Well, I will just say one of the most impacting aspects of moving to Utah and living. So now I am speaking, moving into Utah, coming from outside Utah and Utah and being surrounded by Latter-day Saints. I've really appreciated the openness that Latter-day Saints demonstrate. I really have. Obviously in the YouTube comment section, you're going to get the keyboard renegades that hate what's going on, but that's the YouTube comment section. My neighbors, my friends in my community, the Latter-day Saints that we engage with are so open and they're so kind, and they bear the fruit of God's goodness and love and charity and tolerance in ways that I wish some of my evangelical friends would mimic. So I'm seeing something unique and important there, and I hope to continue to encourage that and be a part of that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, if people don't know where to find you, where would you send them?
There's a platform called YouTube. You can check out.
Heard of it?
Check out. Just search Hello Saints, and you'll see that. And do a little bit on Instagram too. But that's where we do what we do.
If they were to start with one video, what would it be?
That's a good question.
I hate when people ask me this question. I turn into that guy. But
since I'm on your podcast, I'll have to say. I went to a temple in Saratoga Springs about a year and a half ago that my friend Kurt took me to.
That's right.
That's a good one to start with.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one. My wife makes her debut in that video as well, so you get a little bit of her fresh perspective as well.
Yeah.
So
was a good
pastor visits Latter-day Saint temple for the first time. That's a good one.
It is. We're at the end of the interview, people. It's the keyboard renegades. They're about to type in that comment. What question or thought would you put out there, but to maybe have them pause and give a more thoughtful comment on this video?
The ones who are about to destroy me in the comment section.
That's right.
So you wait till the end for this should be at the beginning. This should be the disclaimer at the beginning.
They probably didn't make it to this part, right?
They left their comment within the first 38 seconds and they bounced. Yeah.
But give us what would you want to know from our audience?
What would I want to know, or what would I have to say to them? I would say I love you, and I know that there's certain aspects of interfaith dialogue that can be really uncomfortable, and I hope to not in any way, shape, or form incite any sort of contention, but invite conversation. And if that's something that's not for you, that's totally okay. And I know that this isn't for everybody. So, and where you might be feeling a compulsion to, bare your teeth in a comment section, I would maybe also acknowledge that might, maybe not in every case, but might in some cases come from a place where you have been hurt by a Protestant evangelical. You've been mistreated. Sorry for that. And it makes sense why then that would cause you to want to respond that way. So hopefully through the Lord's grace and goodness, He'll continue to help all of us learn how to mimic charity and tolerance in ways that foster healthy conversation. But if you're not there, that's totally fine. It's totally fine.